The temples of Karnak, Valley of the Kings, Colossi of Memnon, the mortuary temples in Medinet Habu and Deir el-Bahari are all renowned symbols of ancient Egypt. All of these invaluable historical landmarks are found in one place, a city that during the late Bronze Age constituted one of the biggest metropolises in the world. In this episode, we shall take a closer look at the famous city of Thebes, the grand capital of one of the most powerful empires in ancient history, the New Kingdom of Egypt. Jealous? Thinking of starting your own empire? Well, start off with a little patch that you could even give to someone as a gift using the unique service of our sponsor, Established Titles. They sell small plots of land in Scotland, which are sought after because of a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. But to protect these lands, a tree is planted with every order, and Established Titles supports charities like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, so it's a fun and novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland while helping global reforestation efforts. You'll get at least 1 square foot of land in Scotland with a unique plot number and a certificate to prove it. This allows you to officially get Lord or Lady on your credit cards, plane tickets and more. You can also get maps to show your new estate, including the immensely detailed hand-drawn 1611 map by John Speed, held by the National Library of Scotland. It makes a great last-minute gift, and they even have couple packs that come with adjoining plots of land. The first 200 plots bought via our link will all be put together within a few minutes of each other next to the Kings and Generals plot, so act fast to join our little union of forest territories. Check out their Black Friday sale for discounts. Plus, if you use our code KINGS, you'll get an extra 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/kings to get yourself a title or give it as a gift and help support the channel. Thebes was a crowded city, stretching on the banks of the Nile some 500 kilometers south of Memphis and the Giza pyramids. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, it was created by the hands of Amun-Ra, who raised it from the Nile's waters. Thebes was originally a minor trading and mining spot. However, during the first intermediate period in the 21st century BCE, the central government of Egypt collapsed, and the land was divided into provinces ruled by local monarchs. In time, 2 rival centers of power emerged, Heracleopolis in Lower Egypt and Thebes in Upper Egypt, with both having to wage battles against other district principalities as well as against external invaders from Asia. After the desecration of the necropolis in Abydos by Heracleopolitan rulers, which was one of the most significant religious places for the ancient Egyptians, a Theban king of the 11th dynasty, Mentuhotep II, sent an army to Lower Egypt, defeated the king of Heracleopolis, reunited Egypt, and around 2055 BC, established Thebes as the capital of Egypt. From then on, the city intermittently lost and regained its status as the capital of Egypt, before finally, during the 18th dynasty and the rise of the New Kingdom period, entered the age of its greatest prosperity. Throughout the centuries, Thebes was the main city of the 4th Upper Egyptian nome, or province. The ancient Egyptians referred to it as Waset, which means City of the Scepter. Only hundreds of years later would the Greeks call it Thebes, or Diospolis Magna, the great city of the gods. The layout of Thebes gives us a hint at the design of the ancient Egyptian urban centers, a characteristic division between the busy and lively main city in the east and the land of the dead in the west, split by the life-giving Nile River. Thebes covered an area of about 93 square kilometers, in addition to the surrounding area on the west side of the Nile River. Thebes was perfectly suited to be a capital of the Egyptian Empire, an arable floodplain around the Nile River, with a thick, high-nutrient silt layer made it incredibly fertile. But also, its considerable distance from the Egyptian frontiers in the Nile Delta and Nubia kept it relatively safe from invasion. However, at its core, Thebes was a city whose success was derived from its religious importance, as we will now explore by looking at its 2 largest temple complexes. The Temple of Amun-Ra, the Hidden One, who during the New Kingdom period was the head of the entire Egyptian pantheon, was located to the north of the city. At first a modest religious edifice built by Senusret I in the 20th century BCE, it gradually grew in size and splendor over centuries, eventually becoming the largest religious structure in the ancient world. During the New Kingdom period, the Karnak Temple Complex, as it is known today, covered an area of around 200 acres and consisted of 3 main parts. The largest one was the Precinct of Amun, featuring the Great Hypostyle Hall, with 134 enormous sandstone columns, gigantic obelisks, a sacred lake, and over 20 temples and shrines. To the right of Amun's section was the Precinct of Mut, covering around 22 acres, consisting of 6 temples and another sacred lake. Mut was the wife of Amun, and alongside Khonsu, they made up the Theban Triad. To the left of the Precinct of Amun was the Precinct of Montu, god of war. This 5-acre enclosure consisted of 3 temples and yet another sacred lake. The growth of Karnak and importance of Theban gods led directly to the flourishing of the city. It was a major destination for pilgrimages from all over Egypt and had a decisive role in the development of the city. At the end of the New Kingdom, over 80,000 priests helped maintain the temple's premises. The second major temple complex of Thebes is known as the Luxor Temple. Commissioned by Amenhotep III, its construction was completed by Tutankhamun and Horemheb in the 14th century BCE, and later added onto by Ramesses the Great. During the New Kingdom, its 24-meter-high pylon dominated the city's landscape, along with 6 colossal statues of Ramesses the Great. This splendor was amplified by 2 25-meter-high obelisks flanking the entrance. The first 60 meters long courtyard of Ramesses the Great featured 74 columns with bud capitals and plenty of statues of the titular pharaoh's likeness. The colonnade of Amenhotep III, displaying 14 papyrus columns, each 16 meters high, supported incredibly massive architrave blocks. The next courtyard had 64 columns divided into 2 rows on 3 sides, and led to the next hypostyle hall, adjacent to the vestibule. The most sacred part of the temple, accessible only to high priests and pharaohs, began with 2 small rooms, the Hall of Offerings and the Hall of the Sanctuary of the Bark of Amun. They are followed by a sanctuary, the Sanctum Sanctorum, decorated with divine representations. The Luxor Temple was joined to the Karnak complex by an almost 3-kilometer-long paved route, flanked with hundreds if not 1,000 human-headed sphinxes, hence the route's modern name, the Avenue of Sphinxes. The ancients referred to it as a Path of God. Every year at the beginning of the flooding season, a ritual journey of the Theban Triad from the shrines of Karnak to the Luxor Temple would be undertaken, where statues of Amun, Mut and Khonsu were carried by foot along the Avenue of Sphinxes, stopping at 6 altars. The area surrounding the urban spine on the east bank, restricted by the Nile River to the west and farmlands to the east, was packed with houses of the poor and rich, quite often built wall to wall. All these structures were made of dried bricks of clay and mud from the Nile's riverbank. Their production and transport was the task of slaves and children, oftentimes as young as 4 years old. The houses of the less affluent comprised 1 room used for storage and resting. The flat roof was covered with reed canopies and served as a living area and also as a bedroom, especially during hot summers. The open courtyard at the back served as a kitchen, garden and enclosure for animals. The houses of the middle or upper middle class featured 3 to 5 rooms, aligned on a straight axis, with a place for an altar, niches for cultic figures, and false doors. They also included rooms used as bedrooms or workrooms, and small storerooms for food and drink dug into the ground. The lintel above the entrance was often adorned and inscribed with owners' names and titles. Members of the upper class lived in mansions, surrounded by beautiful gardens, including anemone flowers, fruit valleys, palm trees, sycamores and olive trees, and very often featured a pond with brightly coloured fish and lotus flowers. Especially during the New Kingdom, some of the wealthiest owned wells with drinking water located in their courtyard. If possible, such mansions were often situated along the Nile. These mansions were 2-storied, made of 2 or even 3 layers of mud brick, and painted white outside. Locked gateways, high walls and barred windows protected the premises against wild animals and intruders. At its centre, each residence had a living room, warm in winter and cold in summer, constructed a little higher than the rest of the house to keep the sand out. Interiors were very often adorned with colourfully painted geometric or floral patterns to display the owner's status. Even though some of the houses featured bathrooms, there was no running water. Children or slaves needed to fetch the water from the private or public well in order to cook, drink, or bathe. Of all the secular buildings in Thebes, the grandest were the royal palaces. These complexes served not only as a pharaoh's and his entourage's private apartments, but also as an administrative headquarters, a venue for religious activities, and sometimes during military campaigns as a barracks. The largest of these was the Malkata Palace complex, which was built by Amenhotep III around the 11th year of his reign. Covering an area of around 87 acres, it featured what was likely a central columned audience hall, enclosed with a small throne room at the end. These were parts of a more than 600-meter square pharaoh's palace, containing at its back the royal apartment, that is, a bathroom, a private audience chamber, a dressing room, and a bedroom, as well as extensive quarters for members of the pharaoh's family. The main wife of Amenhotep III, Tiye, lived in a separate palace complex situated across the main palace. The palace grounds featured temples, storerooms, kitchens, workshops, houses of servants and staff, administrative buildings called West Villas, as well as vast courtyards for religious festivals and jubilees. Beautiful gardens and an artificial T-shaped harbour measuring 2 by 1 kilometers connected the premises. While the eastern bank of the city was the Kingdom of Amun, which celebrated the life and perpetual rebirth of the sun god, the west bank of the city was the Kingdom of Hathor Amenet and Osiris, with a grand capital necropolis lying at its feet. The west bank of Thebes was called Ementien-Weset by the Egyptians, or Tadjessa, distant land, holy land. The ubiquitous Egyptian religion, unwavering faith in the afterlife, and the belief that the soul will inhabit the tomb for all eternity meant that the tombs and mortuary temples had to be carved in rock or built of stone, which made them much more durable, but also far more expensive than the buildings of the living, i.e. the houses of ordinary citizens or even royal palaces. The entire Theban mortuary architecture testifies to the incredible artistic sense of Egyptian planners and architects, as besides its sophisticated monumentality, it harmonizes with the natural landscape by incorporating sharp cliffs into Deir al-Bahari temples or natural hidden valleys into royal necropolises. Both the art and the architecture of the tombs were not utilitarian. In fact, they were never meant to be seen by anyone. The life of the ancient Egyptians was motivated by religion and belief in the afterlife, hence the West Bank was always the most important part of the city, despite the splendor of the east side. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to state that during the New Kingdom, the West Bank was the center of one of the most powerful empires of the Bronze Age world. The most sacred necropolis of the New Kingdom, the Valley of the Kings, is located in a hidden dry river valley, surrounded by high cliffs, and overlooked by the mountain of Alkern, the Horn. The Valley of the Kings features more than 60 underground tombs of the Egyptian elite, pharaohs, queens, priests, and high-ranking servants. All were carved into the rock between the 16th and 11th century BCE. The first king who decided to hide his tomb from robbers was Thutmose I. From then on, almost all rulers of the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasties were interred in this well-hidden location. The layout of royal burials are all very different from each other, but each tomb features 4 basic elements: stairs, a sloping entrance corridor, and 1 or more halls ending with a burial chamber. The ornamentation of the tombs is almost exclusively religious, displaying Egyptian deities and fragments of funerary texts. Naturally, the royal tombs needed to be grandiose. The tomb of Seti I, including 11 chambers, is the longest and the deepest tomb, reaching almost 138 meters in length and 61 meters in depth. Located just a few kilometers southwest, another, almost equally significant burial site features around 90 tombs. The Valley of the Queens, or Taset Neferu, the Place of Beauty, was intended for the royal children and the pharaoh's many wives. Moderate in comparison with the king's tombs, these funerary monuments included an entrance passage, a few short halls, and a burial chamber. But the West Bank features not only the tombs of Egyptian monarchs, their families and dignitaries, but also temples and villages of the tomb's workers. A testament to the reverence the ancient Egyptians put upon the dead as they built an entire city-sized infrastructure dedicated to serving the souls of the past. In order to ensure that the location of the royal tombs stayed secret, the people who built them were made to live in the isolated village of Deir el-Medina, surrounded by cliffs and mountains and situated a few kilometers away from the Valley of the Queens and Valley of the Kings. Keeping the tomb workers isolated there ensured secrecy regarding the tomb's location and its contents. Another newly discovered New Kingdom settlement, widely known as the Golden City, features houses, administrative buildings, and cemeteries. It was probably inhabited by the people responsible for the maintenance of the nearby Temple of Amenhotep III. However, it was the mortuary temples that formed the landscape of Western Thebes. In a distance of fewer than 5 kilometers, between two major royal necropolises, over a dozen of these mortuary temples were discovered. These religious edifices commemorating the reign of pharaohs and dedicated to their posthumous cult were called houses or mansions of the million years, supplied and supervised by the priests responsible for continuous offerings and rituals. The first mortuary temple on the West Bank was erected by the Middle Kingdom pharaoh of the 11th dynasty, Mentuhotep II. But the first monumental mortuary masterpiece was raised some 550 years later by the 18th dynasty pharaoh Hatshepsut. Located in the heart of Western Thebes and integrated into the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, the temple was called Djoser Djoserou, Holy of Holies. This more than 270 meters wide and 25 meters high structure consists of 3 levels with accurately reflected colonnades. It is one of the greatest Egyptian architectural achievements. Until the end of the New Kingdom, Djoser Djoserou was a focal point of the annual procession emanating from Karnak, known as the Beautiful Feast of the Valley. In it, the Theban triad, Amun-Ra with his family, wife Mut and son Khonsu, left the Sanctum Sanctorum on a sacred bark, which had types of portable shrines covered in gold and precious stones. Carried by the priests on a platform, they were placed in the boats to visit the funerary temples of the pharaohs, to confirm and strengthen the connection between the king of the gods and the king of the peoples, as well as the East Bank with the West Bank. During this time, besides offerings of food and drink, enormous quantities of flowers were presented to the gods, as they were believed to have been great vessels for the divine presence, and only then could have been taken to the relatives' tombs to honor them and guarantee rejuvenation of their spirit. Around 1 century later, in the second half of the 14th century BCE, the largest mortuary temple ever was commissioned by Amenhotep III. This gigantic structure reached almost 100 meters in width and 600 meters in length. Destroyed by Nile floods and earthquakes not long after its construction, it's been known ever since for the 18-meter-high Colossi of Memnon. Later temples of Seti I or Ramesses the Great, known as the Ramesseum, reflect the importance of Thebes, as well as the prosperity and might of the New Kingdom Egyptian Empire. The last monumental mortuary sanctuary was built by Ramesses III. The Temple of Medinet Habu closes the period of all-powerful pharaohs and grandiose architecture in the City of the Dead. In the 13th century BCE, Thebes lost its status as the capital of the Egyptian Empire when Ramesses II moved it to the city of Pi-Ramses, almost 800 kilometers up north. However, despite this, Thebes didn't decline. The cult of Amun was still strong, and the city was highly respected by the ancients. During Thebes' heyday, the priests of Amun accumulated immense wealth and power, so after the pharaoh left the city unattended, they basically ruled Thebes almost until the 7th century BCE, when the city was sacked by the Assyrians and its temples desecrated. However, the invaders were so overwhelmed by the city's splendor that they ordered it to be restored and rebuilt. Nevertheless, even though there were attempts to restore the previous glory of the city, for example during the reign of Nectanebo I in the 4th century BCE, Thebes never returned to its former glory and was eventually destroyed by the Romans in the 1st century CE. Thanks again to our sponsor, Established Titles. Buy a small plot of land in Scotland and become a lady or a lord, or give this title as an amazing and easy gift. In return, Established Titles plants a tree to protect the pristine forests of our planet. Take advantage of their Black Friday sale and use our discount code KINGS at establishedtitles.com/kings to get a further 10% off. More videos on Bronze Age civilizations are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.